We are days away from a new year, and I don't know about you, but I'm excited. 2023 is destined for greatness. I believe it, and I believe that it can be that for you too. I wanted to give you an inside glimpse into how I've been planning for the new year and how I do every year, and offer you some tips that keep me focused after the honeymoon phase of the new year excitement fades, because we know that will happen. If you are an author and you're in need of some planning ideas as the countdown is on, today I've got you covered. Hey, I'm Stephanie Feger, and Empower is my middle name. Well, okay, listen, not really, but y'all, I think it should be. I believe that empowered people empower people, and I'm obsessed with empowering you, the nonfiction author, with impactful marketing strategies to help you take your important message and share it with those who desperately need it and want it and will buy it. I'm the owner and chief strategist of the Empower PR Group and the author of 3 books myself, including my newest book, Make Your Author Impact, Sell More Books, Increase Your Reach, and Achieve Your Why. I've been called to merge my love for reading books and writing books and marketing books to help nonfiction authors like you with laser-focused strategies and tactics to write books that sell, promote books to those who need and want them most, and build meaningful businesses from empowering messages. I hope that you think of this as your one-stop shop for marketing insights from an author who has been there, who has done that, and understands exactly where you are. So get your pens ready, because I'm ready to empower you. This is the Empowered Author Podcast. I can almost hear the countdown on the television. Party supplies are prepped and ready. I have my 2023 glasses, and I'm chilling some sparkling grape juice in the fridge right now for New Year's Eve as it approaches. All right, wait, no. Who am I kidding? I always fall asleep prior to the countdown. I don't know if you're like me, but I do. And I hate buying stuff that will get tossed out immediately, like all those party supplies. I am not that person, y'all, so it doesn't happen. And 2023 glasses, like, unless there's a prescription going on, I can't wear them anymore. I do, however, have some delicious sparkling grape juice ready for Corey, the kids, and I to toast to probably at like 7 o'clock on New Year's Eve. Outside of that, honestly, I'm just not one of those people who get excited about the parties of the new year. It's just not what I get excited about. But I do get excited about what a new year can do for an author, an entrepreneur, and our business, mine included. Season 10 of the Empowered Author Podcast, which will focus on a variety ways to plan for and execute book marketing plans, it will formally kick off next week. Y'all, I'm doing the bonus episode ahead of time to prep for the enchilada of the season that is to come. If you're in the middle of tackling 2023 planning, I wanted to help you put some finishing touches on it and share with you how I plan to tackle 2023. I thought you may find that interesting. Or, deep breather, if you haven't started, no worries, it's totally okay. You'll be among the many who haven't, or the many who have and won't actually execute their plans, but that's a story for another day. You are likely in the majority right now. While we get into the nitty gritty of the season, really on how to plan for book marketing efforts, how to write a marketable book, how to build an authorpreneur business that will be sustainable for you, and more, today I wanted to share with you 3 things that I do this time of the year, and I've been doing this last month, that I thought you might find insightful. And here goes. These are the 3 things. It's I reflect, I plan, and I prioritize. All right, let's dive in. An author I've had the pleasure of working with for years always reminds me regularly that learning happens when reflection happens. In fact, reflection is the beginning point of learning, not the end point. And it's really true. How can you get where you want to go if you don't know what worked and what didn't? And the simple answer is this: you can't. You can't. I'm living proof of it. For many years, I would try new things to see what would make the most sense, but I would be left really with too many competing priorities and too little time to accomplish them all. Y'all, I had become in the business of a messy spaghetti. And let me explain that, what I mean there. All that spaghetti throwing, with no plan, just made a pasta mess on the floor. So now instead of just seeing what will stick, I like to start with reflection. And I like to sit back and reflect on the past year and what worked, what didn't, what feels good, what didn't, and what changes need to be made. So I want you to start when you're thinking about reflecting on you. I think you have to start there. If you don't focus on you, then you're missing a big piece because you are the glue of your author business, your authorpreneur business, of your life. So you have to start there. Let me ask you a couple of questions for consideration. One, are you doing what you are called to do? Are you fulfilling your life's purpose? Are you leveraging your skill set best? Do you know? If you do, awesome. If you don't, honestly, this is probably the hardest part of life in general, figuring out what you are called to do and then living it out. I think life will give you indications of what this path could or should be, but you really have to listen closely. And I find that's really hard because we have a very noisy, chaotic world, and it's hard to hear these subtleties and these subtle messages amongst the noise. So this month, I've been doing two things to really reflect on me and the business that I'm building, and I thought you might find them helpful. I've been doing some reading, and it's not client reading. It's not even my own book reading. There are two books, actually three, but we'll talk about the third later, that I have been committed to rereading every year. And it is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks and Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. The Big Leap is the first one I want to start on when we're talking about you, because what I love about The Big Leap is it's a reminder on how and where to find what your path should be. And I want to share with you two of my biggest takeaways from this book. I just love this book. If you haven't read it, go get it now and read it. It's a really quick read, it's an easy read. I love it. Something he talks about in his book are, well, two things that are spoken about in this book are talking about your zone of genius and limiting beliefs. So I want to start with the zones first. There are four zones of you that you have. There's the zone of incompetence, the zone of competence, the zone of excellence, and the zone of genius. The zone of incompetence is pretty self explanatory. This is this place in our life where you are doing things that maybe you shouldn't be doing because you're incompetent at it. I always say for me, it's like technology, setting up a TV, getting my new computer up and working, those types of things. Can I figure it out? Probably. Does it make me go insane? Absolutely. I am not competent in this area. So you have to be self aware to know, yeah, that's not me. That's a zone of incompetence. You don't want to live there. If you're doing something that you're not competent in, then it's not the right thing for you to be doing. Just saying, just saying. Now, your zone of competence, this is a place where you can do it. Sure. Like, why not? You're good at it. You're fine. You can do it. You're competent in it. For me, I would say that I'm competent in creating systems, right? I'm competent and I can do systems, no big deal. But it took me a long time to get there, and it took me a long time and a lot of headaches and knocking my head up against the wall because the way my brain works is I like to strategize, I like to plan, but the processes and the systems to execute sometimes make me explode. Now, our team has spent some time and invested in others who live in their zone of genius and excellence, which I'll talk about next, to do this to help set us up for success. So now I feel really, really well and good in this. But prior to doing that, it was like, walking in completely unaware of where I was supposed to go. I was competent, I could figure it out, but it took me too long to do it. That's an indicator, in my opinion, that you might not be living and doing the things you should be doing if you are living in your zone of competence and something is taking you longer than it should. So the next two zones, your zone of excellence and your zone of genius, are confusing to be in, right? Your zone of excellence is something you're really great at. Like you're really, really good at it, right? People will invest in it and for you to do. People enjoy it, you enjoy it, right? Like your zone of excellence is not a bad place to be, but if you stop there, you will never fulfill fully this higher level purpose, this path of amazingness that you're supposed to do to get to your zone of genius. So a lot of people stop in their zone of excellence. And I want you to get to your zone of genius. So I wanted to take a second and I wanted to read a little excerpt from The Big Leap on zone of genius because I thought it might inspire something within you. Here goes. Liberating and expressing your natural genius is your ultimate path to success and life satisfaction. Your zone of genius is the set of activities you are uniquely suited to do. They draw upon your special gifts and strengths. Your zone of genius beckons you with increasingly strong calls as you go through your life. The call to genius is the name I've given to these inner promptings. By age 40, most of us have tuned out the call to genius and are getting loud, repeated alarms hidden in the form of depression, illness, injuries, and relationship conflict. These alarms are reminding us to spend more time feeding our natural genius and letting it do its magic in the world. Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. So our life will constantly bug us until we get to the zone of genius. And I'm telling you, every year I need to read this book and be reminded because it's really easy to fall back into your zone of excellence. But when you live in your zone of genius, that's where the magic happens, y'all. And that's where I want you to be focused on this year is figuring out how do you get there? Now, there are things that will hold you back from getting there, like, oh, I don't know, you. you. In Gay Hendricks' book, he talks about the upper limit and limiting beliefs. And the limiting beliefs are the things that we tell ourselves consciously or subconsciously that hold us back from accomplishing our zone of genius. Okay? These are things, and not just things we say or think, but they can be like illnesses and life situations that happen weirdly enough as a hindrance to our own success. In the book I wanted to share, there's a couple of ways to spot upper limit issues. So I wanted to highlight a couple of those for you. One of them is worry. Worrying is usually a sign that there's an upper limit issue, that what is called in the book, we're upper limiting. It's usually not a sign that we're thinking about something useful. It's usually a sign that we're holding ourselves back, that there is something that's holding us back. So if you're finding yourself thick in worry, that could be an upper limit issue. Criticism and blame are two other things that could be a way to spot an upper limit issue. If you find that that is something you're doing, it could mean that you are playing around in this upper limit problem. And criticizing and blaming are actually, I don't know, like a way to focus on somebody else instead of yourself. And I find that very interesting. In the book, the author writes, criticism and blame are addictions. They are costly addictions because they are the number one destroyer of intimacy and close relationships. So think about that. Like if and not just in personal but professional. So if you want to find out if this is an upper limit problem, he makes the note in the book to try to stop it for a day and see what happens. If it's not an addiction, you'll be able to stop right away. If it's an addiction, it'll creep back. And so sometimes criticism is self criticism and self blame, not for other people. So those could be indicators of an upper limit issue. Ooh, deflecting is another one. It's a big one, actually. Have you ever been around somebody who says stuff, or you say something like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing what you just did," and instead of them being able to take in that compliment, they dodge it. That is an example of deflecting. It doesn't allow the positive energy or positive efforts to land and be noticed, that it's kind of like oil and vinegar where it can pop right back off. That could be an indication of an upper limit issue as well, because if you're unable to accept praise, maybe you are creating a barrier for yourself on being able to really grow into your zone of genius. The author talks about squabbling, arguments, and notes that if you find yourself being more argumentative, it usually means you've hit your upper limit, right? That you can't just settle in the amazingness of where you're at in your growth, but that unintentionally you might be the beginning and the starter of arguments. So it says when things are going well, you could crimp the flow of positive energy by starting a conflict. And that conflict could last for quite some time. And what it could do is actually make you not be able to get to that zone of genius. It could be something that holds you back from getting there. This one always hits me because he talks about getting sick and getting hurt. And a quote from the book says, when things are going well, some of us have a pattern that is pure upper limit problem. We get sick or we get hurt. And I think that's interesting because I know people who have identified, great things are coming and they get sick. They can't accomplish it. And might be you. That was me before. I've had issues where that's happened myself too. And that could be an indicator of an upper limit issue that's holding you back. It's you holding you back without you even knowing it. Now, some of these things are things you can't control or they're happening with other people, and that's outside of your sphere of influence, but there are things that are within yours. And if you are on the path to accomplish and live within your zone of genius, you are going to have to crash through limiting beliefs. This requires mindset work, this requires commitment to mindset work, and this requires being highly self aware and identifying when you're on the verge of something amazing and being very cognizant of what could be holding you back, including you. Now, the second thing in regards to reflection that I love to do every year is reflect on finances. Not nearly as fun or shiny or exciting, but equally important in your life and in your business. So, another book I read every year is called Profit First. And you might be asking why. And it's because I actually need to be reminded of this constantly. So, before I ever read this book, I remember I would see my bank account increase as my business grew, and I got excited, but I also got very leery. And I would grow very leery of what I could or should invest in the company. I didn't know. I would worry. I would go, did I have enough money for taxes to pay, or how much should I be paying myself? And let me be honest, I'm going to be completely honest with you. For years I didn't. I didn't pay myself anything. I was encouraged by my business coach to read Mike Michalowicz's book Profit First, and my business and my life changed immediately because of it. Okay, running a business is no walk in the park at all. It is really, really hard, friends. In fact, I tell people who talk about wanting to start a business, like, are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's awesome. But it is so hard. And for me, the financial part was probably the hardest. Now, I know how to budget. Like really good at budgeting, and I know how to stick to one. I'm really good at that too. But I am not an accountant, and I'm not a business accountant. And I didn't know how to run a business budget or the business. And I was learning both at the same time. But now I do. I do now that I read Profit First. So you might be in the same boat. Maybe you're selling books. That's awesome. Maybe you're doing coaching and consulting work on the side. That's fantastic. Maybe you're doing some speaking. Yay, I hope it's paid. But how are you managing your finances accordingly? The profit first approach ensures that you're building a business that gives you the ability to build a life alongside it by putting profit first. You see, the age old accounting formula of revenue minus expenses equals profits isn't how to tackle it. There's so many businesses that have amazing revenue, but due to their increasing expenses, there is no profit left for the business owner. And I'm not going to lie to you. If you do not have a business that is investing in you, it will not succeed because you will lose steam and energy. And so Mike shares his approach and ensures that profits are really the first step in your business. And when you focus on that first, then the rest will follow. So, as you plan for 2023, I really want you to have a business that is healthy and one that doesn't give you heart palpitations. No heart palpitations over here. After reading this book, I realized that I needed to make a big shift. And you might be too, from having a hobby to running a business. That was a tough one to digest. When you decide to run a business, things change. And that includes how you look at your finances. A quote from the book that I really like is this. It says, "A financially healthy company is a result of a series of small daily financial wins, not one big moment. Profitability isn't an event, it's a habit." Interesting. Interesting. At a high level, from reading the book, now the book goes in very, very granularly, but at a high level, what I wanted to share is that Mike outlines how to do things to ensure that you've created a habit where profit comes first, where profitability is important. And he does this by helping you identify how to set up bank accounts, how to systematize your income, and how to pay yourself, and how to make it all a habit along the way. So it is a habit now in my business. Twice a month I tackle it. It takes me about 10 minutes each time. I'm not scared to look at my bank accounts. I know what I can invest in now. I get excited when I see the business being successful. And when I get a call from the accountant saying, hey, we need to give more to taxes, I am able to breathe because we've planned for it. So if you haven't read the book, Profit First. I highly recommend and encourage you to do so. I was able to do it in one sitting because it was so enlightening in my business. So it is a little bit more dense in regards to content if you are not into the financial side of things. And I mean that more dense than Gay Hendricks' book, The Big Leap. But I sat down in one day and couldn't put Profit First down. Such an amazing book. And it's one that I reread every year. Finally, in your reflection, I want you to think about your goals because uncovering your goals is going to be the path for you to outline what you want to accomplish next year. And I don't just mean financial goals. I mean beyond that because entrepreneurship isn't simple. It requires dedication and perseverance. So if you don't know your goals, your big ticket dreams, you may find yourself stumbling a bit. So next week's episode, we will dive deeper into this topic, but pull out the notes section of your phone or a pen and paper and start jotting down some of your goals. They can be anything from personal to professional and everywhere in between. And when you do, I'm going to make a prediction that you will likely see a trend, and that will become an underlying thread that will connect all of them. And that's likely you. The second thing that I do this time of year is plan. So I used to think planning was for the birds, y'all, for real. But once I started to plan, something crazy happened. I started accomplishing the plans. What I realized, however, was to be effective at planning was that I needed to build planning into my everyday. So I'm not a big believer in 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plans because my life changes and I've evolved how I see my life to be something that's more nimble than that. But I do believe in regular planning and building it into my everyday because it helps me know if I'm on the right path accordingly, and it allows me to self redirect if need be. So, I want to share with you a few ways that I do that. First of all, you do need a plan. I'm a believer in a yearly plan, and that's about as far as I go. This season, I'm going to help you uncover that no matter where you are in your business. And if planning and a plan gives you the heebie jeebies, our team would be happy to help. We love helping authors create author or authorpreneurship plans. We're poised and we are excited and ready to help you. Secondly, and this might be the most important to me, is you can have a plan, but you need to know what success will look like and what it means to you. So, how will you know if you're successful at your plan? Is it metrics you need to meet? Is it a aesthetic or qualitative feeling? Is it a number of books that are sold? Is it a number of revenue income? Is it a mindset or flexibility in your life? I don't know. Only you can determine what success will look like. If planning is something, but these two things, building a plan, planning, success, goals, all that stuff, are things that you could use some time reflecting in. My latest book, Make Your Author Impact, begins with this conversation, and I think you might find that really helpful. The next part are two things that I actually do to help ensure that I have a plan and that I stick to the plan. So, the first one is to make sure I have a plan. Something new that I did this year, and I'm hopeful to build into my business moving forward, is what I have been calling a December sabbatical. The month of December is crazy over here. 2 of my 3 children have birthdays, which is awesome. And crazy, stressful, but awesome. Plus, you have Christmas and Christmas priorities and expectations and presents and just a crazy time of the year. So we have taken a client-free sabbatical in December where our team is able to reflect and plan for next year and get prepared and feel really good about the new year instead of going into it with, more heart palpitations. So I'm not saying you have to take a December sabbatical, but I would encourage you to take a time in your life where you don't have external requirements, commitments, or priorities, that you can focus on your business, your book, your priorities, and you can plan. Secondly, this is something I've did this past year too, and I'm going to continue this year. I've loved it. And it's what I call CEO retreats. So a CEO retreat for me is where I take myself, and I to a hotel for a couple nights. And usually it's just about 20 minutes or so from the house. So it's nowhere fun. I mean, nowhere super fun. One day maybe, but for now, it's just literally getting out of my normal and getting into a place where I don't have external distractions. And then I do a couple things when I have my CEO retreats. One, I reflect and look at the last quarter and I evaluate it amongst the plan. How am I doing? Did we accomplish it? What were some hiccups? What were some struggles? And then I usually have a project or two that I've identified that quarter that I need some focused energy to do, to execute, and I spend some time doing it. And I can do that when I'm away at the hotel. I usually also bring some popcorn and some movies and my bathing suit, and I just veg out and take myself out to dinner and enjoy staying up late and watching movies. And my kids will come and go swimming a couple of nights while I'm there, but then they go home, and it is a focused point for me and ensures that I am keeping true to the plan and I'm holding myself accountable along the way. All right, so you've reflected, you've planned, or you will. Now I focus my energy on prioritization. Plans that collect dust, they aren't plans, my friends. They are dust collectors. They are wastes of time. They are waste of resources. Bugs me to the hilt. But plans that are prioritized, I believe that's what separates people from living in their zone of excellence to their zone of genius. So, how do you do that? Well, there are two ways that I'm going to share with you. There might be many more, and I'd love to share with me if you have other ways that you prepare for the new year. But one of them for me has become identifying a guiding word or a word of the year. Now, this is meant to just be almost like a meditation, right? It's a focal point. It's not all the things. It's not like a mission statement, or I do have guiding principles this year, but it's not any of that. It is literally a word. And anytime I feel like I'm falling off the path, this word will guide me back. So I remember the last 2 years of words. I know I've done more, but the first year that I remember is truth. That was a word I used. And this past year was peace. And that was an underlying kind of intention for the year. You know, the first one was I wanted to get to the truth of everything. What was the truth? What did I need to do? What was my truth? And then how can I find peace in my business, in my life, and everywhere in between? So, have you identified a word of the year? I like to think of these words as kind of action and reflection. So it's more not like not so much a noun, but it's like a verb, right? It's something you could be doing. My word for this year, just FYI, is purposeful. And so that's not a verb, but that's kind of an energy, right? Like a focused energy with a push for this year. So let me uncover a little bit about a word of the year. Why do you need it? Well, what I love about a word of the year is it guides you, it helps you prioritize, it helps you focus. But what it really does is it keeps you grounded. Because remember that honeymoon phase of the new year that I say we will get over pretty quickly? Yeah, before you know it, you will be in the thick of the same old problems you had before the clock turned 12. And you need something to ground you and remind you of what your intentions were for the year. So, identifying a word of the year will keep you grounded. So, how do you uncover it? There is not one right way to do it, but I'll share with you a couple of ideas. One is as you're reflecting and planning for the year and knowing where you want to go and what stumbling blocks you need to uncover, a word might help you. It might kind of be like a shifting of the sand, and you might be able to quickly uncover what that word is to help you as you come across those stumbling blocks. I like to spend some time praying about it. Purposeful for me actually came out of going to church. Prior to that, my word for the year was going to be intention or intentional. I felt really good about that word actually because I was ready to focus the business a bit and make sure everything we were doing was fully intentional. Well, after going to church that weekend, I was like, oh my gosh, I need a pivot to purposeful. Now, purposeful and intentional are very similar, right? They both are me focused and ensuring what I'm doing is the right thing that makes sense to a bigger kind of purpose or intention. But intention to me felt transactional and purposeful felt like a calling. And I really needed something that felt deeper because that's kind of at the root of who I am and how I tackle work. The last way to maybe uncover it is to consider what your values are, your goals are, and it might also kind of stem to the top from there too. Once you have a word of the year, it's only good if you're making it visible and incorporating it into your everyday. So, literally, just today, I purchased a sign. This will be the second sign I've purchased with the word of the year. And I put it in my desk. I have it somewhere where I can see it that reminds me that, hey, this is what your goal was. This is what your kind of guiding word was for the year. Don't forget it, Steph. And then you could also take Post-it notes, put them places. You could, put it in your computer. You can make it as a backdrop on your computer screen, whatever you need to remember that that's a goal or a guiding word for you. Then talk about it, incorporate it in what you do. If you're running a business, talk about it with your team. Make it visible. The second recommendation I have for you to ensure that you are prioritizing planning for this year and you is something I did last year that was weirdly surprising and awesome. And that was to write yourself an email before the clock turns 12 and schedule it to go out in 6 months. Now, this email, I want you to reflect on all the planning you've done, all of the prioritization and reflection and everything, all of the guiding principles and the guiding words and where you want to be. I want you to reflect on all of that and remind yourself of where you had hoped to be in 6 months. And then I want you to ask yourself some questions that you might be considering right now in planning and say, hey, did you get there? Like you can write an email to yourself from yourself asking, this is what we said, or stating, this is what we said we were going to do. Are we there yet? If we're not, how can we get back on track? What I found when I got that email was a really interesting blast from the past that charged myself with another jolt of energy to get over the crazy humps of life and obstacles. So schedule an email and send it to yourself. It'll be really fun. I think you'll enjoy it. I have found when you prioritize you, you can accomplish anything. And listen, I know it. I believe it. I've seen it happen. I am excited to see it happen for you too. I don't think it's odd for an author to recommend some books to read each year to plan for the next, right? If you haven't read Profit First or The Big Leap, I highly encourage you to put it in your Amazon cart right now and do it, because they will help you reflect on where you've been and where you want to go. Once you have clarity on the path ahead, make a plan, stick to it, and if that makes your stomach do knots, just holler. We're plan gurus over here, and I'd love to help you create a plan for the new year. Now, plans only work, however, if they are used. So how will you keep yourself rooted to the plan? Will you do that through planning days or retreats, through a word of the year? Determine that now, because obstacles will show up. And if you have a plan to tackle them, you'll be ahead of the game. The rest of the season, we will get into the nitty-gritty of book marketing planning. I cannot wait to share with you my tips to ensure that 2023 is the best year yet. Author friend, thank you so much for listening today, for saying yes to becoming empowered and making your author impact. As you know, I'm a believer that empowered people empower people. It has been so much fun empowering you today and this year, and now it is your turn to empower others.